Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast. I'm sick, but I'm getting better, but my mind is a little slow. When I said good morning, I forgot why I'm saying good morning. I'm in a good mood. I'm excited that you're here. I'm in a good mood because I'm starting to feel better. I still got a cough, but we'll deal with that. Beautiful day out there. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. I'm excited to get started today's training. I know that for a lot of us, anytime we have a brand new year anyways, it's got kind of a level of, nerves and excitement for us. But, this year is a little different. We can recognize that as such. And so I'm going to be diving into some of the things going on in the Trump administration, et cetera. But before I do, I just want to give a quick tip for those of you showing up early and on time. And thank you, by the way, for doing that. When you show up early and on time, LinkedIn lets other people know that we've gone live. We got the training. And live training, participating here live is much better than watching a replay, even though I make those available free and immediately. When you're here live, you can engage with people in chat, build your network, et cetera. And you'll see me talk about this. It's really important as we move into 2025 here that we've got a strong network around us, a strong community that makes us stronger. Keeps us from feeling so alone. My tip for you, though, and I can already see some of you have done this, like Lori. I posted this morning a post on LinkedIn here that said, I have 37,000 connections, followers on LinkedIn, and I want you to be able to connect with them. And it's an awesome post that I do every so often where I just try to encourage people in my network to come in and tell others that they're open for connecting. And generally, you have the ability to connect with 100 people. There's a ton of people. I think we've been out there maybe 2 hours or something. We got 60 or 70 people who have commented, and 60 or 70 other people who have given thumbs up. And so there's a lot of engagement. And I just use Lori as an example, and she supports on the proposal side, but she's in there. She's like, hey, I'm open to connecting. Reach out to me, and so you can connect. You say, hey, I saw you on LinkedIn. But anyways, my tip for you is go connect on LinkedIn, whether you engage with my post or you just get in there and connect with the people. Like I see Melvin on here and some others who are on there. So that's my tip for success for those of you showing up early and on time. Again, thank you for doing that. I'm feeling much better, but I am sick. And so I got this cough, and I apologize for it as I move forward. But don't worry, I'll make up for it in the content that I share. Let's go ahead and get started on how the Trump administration's hiring freeze has impacted government contracting in 2025 and where we're going. And I thought I'd start off with just, if you haven't heard me recommend this book before, 7 Habits for Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I've been reading this book since I was in the Army back in 97. It's the first time I read it. And the book is awesome. Fantastic business and personal growth book. But in that, Stephen Covey talks about these 2 circles, a circle of concern and a circle of influence. And the idea of a circle of concern is this is everything that's going on in the world. An example is I might be concerned about world peace or hunger, or just better highways across the country so I can drive across from Washington, D.C. to Washington State or something. I might be concerned about those, but I don't really have any impact on those or influence on making those move forward, right? And I know there's people out there say, oh, you have influence on everything. And that's not true. And so I don't have influence on the NASA space program or something. What I do have influence on is my own health, for example, right? My company, my network, the quality of my presentations to you, my ability to share content with you. I have influence. And that's that second circle, the inner circle, is what Stephen Covey calls the circle of influence, what you truly have influence over. And what happens is if you think about the circle of concern and the circle of influence as it relates to what's going on in the government contracting world in federal agencies with the Trump administration and President Trump's decisions, with the decisions or the activities being done in DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, when you look at those, a lot of that is things that are in your circle of concern. And the more we focus on those things that are in our circle of concern, actually, the more it begins, and that's what I'm trying to show on the left here with the red lines or red arrows, is it begins to actually shrink our circle of influence. we have less influence the more time we spend looking at things that are in our circle of concern. Certainly they concern me, right? World hunger or peace or something. That concerns me, but the more I focus on that, the less influence I actually have. And then I'm just observing the world happening around me. It's a reactionary way of doing things. The flip side of that is the more I focus on my circle of influence, the more I begin to expand my influence. For example, I really want to influence a ton of stuff in government contracting in a positive way for small businesses. But I don't touch everything. That's the SBA, that's DOD, and things like that. But what I do have is the ability to come and do these trainings every day. I do have the ability to grow my network and then open my network so that you can be not only part of my network, but meet other people in my network and basically just use me as an off-ramp. Grab a coffee and head on out kind of thing. You don't need me to grow your network, but I make your network growth possible. Well, these are things that when I do that and I focus on my circle of influence, then I expand my circle of influence. And I have done that over the past 8 years, that I've done so much and focused so much in giving to the industry that now I am recognized by agencies like DOD, for example, or NASA or NSA or Department of Energy and others who look in and go, hey, this guy gives, and he really is trying to grow the industry, which is what we need in the agency. Hey, Neil, why don't you come and engage with us in some of our events? And so I have more influence. Now I can talk to them more about, well, why don't you share more information to industry, right? And it's this back and forth thing that enables me to keep growing my circle of influence, which eventually allows me to start touching more of those things that are in my circle of concern. So this is a large way of trying to set your mind for going into this 2025 and the Trump administration. Yes, you're going to have a lot of stuff in your circle of concern, and I'm not at any way saying don't be concerned by it, but remember that the more you focus on your circle of influence, the more you'll actually be able to do for yourself and for others, for your community, et cetera. Today's topic, we're going to be diving down deep into that then, is looking at the Trump hiring freeze and some of the other decisions, but mainly the Trump hiring freeze and the funding freezes that we're hearing about, and how in particular they're impacting government contracting. I'm not here to talk about the politics side. I'm not even here to talk about the government side, except for from a sales perspective. My purpose for these trainings are to sit there and help you figure out paths to success in 2025. And so each day I do these trainings, I'm trying to look for tactical tips for you that enable you to continue despite everything happening around you that you really don't have control over. You do have control over your plan. I'm going to break today's training down into 3 sections. What do we know about the hiring funding freeze? And I'm just going to talk about that from a high casual level. I'm not trying to be some authoritative source. I'm not trying to regurgitate what you can go to the whitehouse.gov and every other news channel out there and learn about. Just from a high level, what do we understand about it? And then that feeds right into how is that hiring freeze in particular, how is that impacting our government contracting, right? How's it impacting me, or in your case, you? And then the last thing I want to do is give you some proactive tips for 2025. So I'm going to give you, I think, 8 or 10 tips. We'll see how much time I have to get there for you. If this is what you're looking for, be proactive in the chat. I want to know that you are ready to take control of your 2025 and success by being proactive, not reactive to the situation. So do me a favor, be proactive in the chat, and that gives me a second to drink water too. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I am the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I'm co-founder of GovCon in a Box, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business government contractor after I got out of the Army. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we're going to have repeatable, predictable results. And this is what I want for you. This is why I come back day after day. Thanks so much for all the Be Proactives out there. By the way, when you write Be Proactive here, it goes out on LinkedIn and people are like, be proactive about what? And so they're going to be reactive and come over here and check out what's going on in the live. We got well over 100 people in the chat, so make sure you're paying attention to who's in here. I'm looking at Kami's in here from Graham. Actually, you'll see on the next slide, he and his company, they're in the #1 slot for the 100 Club. But before I get there, make sure you subscribe to the Government Contracting Success newsletter. It's the largest government contracting newsletter in LinkedIn. And we provide constant government contracting sales tips in there in particular. Last thing I want to let you know is next week's training. I haven't scheduled the training, but I'm going to do a networking event I'm thinking I'm going to do it on Monday. And actually, if you want me to do this, maybe you could put this into the chat, just a yes or no. Is Monday too soon? If I go, hey, we're going to network, instead of doing a training, I just bring you together for a virtual networking on Zoom. Just put yes or no, yes networking, no networking, or yes or no is fine. But that's my plan, is for Monday to do that. And then I do want to celebrate the 100 companies, or the 144 companies in the 100 Club. Let me just zoom myself out of there for a second. These companies have done what they need to do to be visible to federal buyers on the buyer's tools. We call this a federal visibility score. I just created this a long time ago that says, are you findable and attractive to federal buyers? It's a very simple set of steps on the government's own tools. And so you can go to govconinabox.com, type in your company name or your UEI or cage code. You'll see your company profile. It's where we pull everything in about your company. And you can see a score in the top right-hand corner. When you click on it, you will see step-by-step guidance on how to get to the 100 Club. There are 370,000 companies or so, small business companies, currently registered in DSBS to sell to the federal government. Only 144 are having 100 score or in the 100 Club. Let's get that up. We've got more than 100. We got 130 people with YouTube and Twitter and LinkedIn. Let's get you in there. If you're struggling with it, reach out to Gus or myself or Alex or any of the other people on the team. We'll help as we go forward. Okay, I'm seeing yes, yes, yes. So I think I'll do that. And it's great that people are putting in, like Jerry's 100 Club, number 46. Okay, let's get rocking and rolling. I got 22 minutes. What do we know about the hiring and funding freeze? And this is just my way of sharing my understanding. If I'm in a meeting having a conversation just with my customers or something. So this has been around since the minute the inauguration was done. President Trump signed executive orders, and this was one of the first ones. No new hires. And what this means is the federal government has basically 2 million civilians, I think 2 million military, roughly 4 million people, but the civilian side is what we're talking about. And what his executive order said is basically no more new hires effective immediately. I can't remember if it was a 90-day freeze or something, but you can expect that freeze to go on. And there are some exceptions, certainly in the military and other places, but for the most part, no new hiring freezes. Excuse me, no new hiring. There is an interesting, let's just call it a guideline for the moment, for lack of a better word. But there's this 4-to-1 ratio that President Trump has put in place that says every new person you hire, you have to have 4 people have been let go. And I don't think that really matters how it happened, whether they were laid off or whether they retired, right? And anywhere in between. Again, keep in mind, I'm here to train on the facts about how it relates to sales. I'm not here to pick either side and say whether I agree or disagree with anything. I'm trying to communicate to you the facts of the situation, or the general facts, so that you can make decisions based on them. But this is a really important thing, this 4-to-1 ratio. You really understand that the workforce is significantly going to be reduced in the federal government. We're watching this, right? This is live. And this is very important for government contractors because we're the other part of the workforce. You have the government employees, civilians and military, and you have the contractors. Together we make team government, or whatever you want to call us, right? And we are there, and we have the flexibility that enables the government to kind of turn to us. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. A couple of things that were just third and fourth bullet that I had here is as soon as this kind of thing happened, thousands of job offers were rescinded out there. And so this is basically the new workforce coming in, for the most part, the new young or next generation workforce coming in. Thousands of those job offers are just rescinded immediately because there was a freeze. I think Forest Service, I was reading about Forest Service, they had 2,000 just with them alone where they just rescinded the offers. And then recently, I think just this past week, probationary folks. And so these are people, the government, they call them probationary, but basically 1 year or less, maybe 2 years or less, but 1 year or less. And I saw somewhere yesterday, the day before, where that was like 96,000 people. The reason I say this as it relates to us government contractors is this is a significant amount of people who are going to be coming in and moving up and developing institutional knowledge, the knowledge you gain from working within an institution. When you think about government contractors, if you're in an agency, you got some of this traction, then you start being that one with institutional or historical knowledge. I used to use this as a selling, my mind's not working totally with being sick here, but like a selling thing I said, I'm losing the word completely. But for 20 years, I used to say the same thing. Look, when you work with us contractors on the outside, we stay here forever, especially in the military. I said this a lot because military people would transfer to a new job every 2+ years, right? But we would be there 5 years, 10 years. And so we have the institutional knowledge similar to what civilians have within the military. All right. And the fifth bullet I put here is 75,000 people opted out of federal service with whatever that retirement thing is. And so they opted out. Potentially they're going to be accepted. There's 75,000 people. This is a significant, these are designed to be just communicating to you that it's not just a hiring freeze. It's a significant reduction in the workforce. Where do we fit in? Where do you fit in as government contractors? Because the government will still have to run. It still has essential and optional services that will be part of the Trump administration going forward. So I put here, and I said it already, the senior workforce is not being replaced. This is always a concern in any organization, whether it's commercial or the federal government, is when the people who've been here 10, 20 years start leaving or retiring, and there's nobody really coming along. This is where I think that contractors have a big play, and we talk about that more in a minute. And then DOGE is cutting anywhere, and I put here anywhere it can rationalize, not necessarily justify. That's a whole separate conversation. But they're looking around, and this is something to track and pay attention to. So these are all just some things to keep in mind about what do we know out there. And again, if you're coming in a little late, the reason I'm talking about this is how does that line up to how I proactively plan for my success or your success in 2025 as a government contractor? We can't let our reactionary nature drive our businesses. We've got to be proactive and move out. We certainly have to interact with everything that's happening around us, but we can do that from a proactive standpoint. So I think I might have talked about some of this stuff, excuse me, already, but the first bullet I have here is there is a specific thing in the executive order from President Trump that says you cannot use contractors, federal agency, to get around my hiring freeze. And so if you were thinking that, hey, there's a hiring freeze or, the agencies are in a jam because of this, well, they're not just going to flat out hire like staffing contractors. They're not allowed to do that. So you've got to kind of figure your way around it. There is going to be some agencies who look at essential services and will have to expand some contracts to get that work done. But that's a little different than just trying to flat out say, well, if I can't hire a person, I'll just secure a contract. That's not going to happen. The next thing I want you to pay attention to on how the hiring freeze has impacted contracting is that there's a massive amount of confusion among the federal workforce. And this is something that's really important for you to pay attention to. I was talking with a customer who was telling me yesterday that somebody on their team was just doing normal business development outreach call, and they kind of got the riot act read to them about, don't you know what's going on over here? And so there is a lot of feelings going on, a lot of confusion. People don't know if decisions they make might be reversed or might go counter to what's going on. I just want you to keep an open mind about that right now. I did a whole training on Monday about paying attention to what the federal buyers are thinking. Seek first to understand them. So go watch that. On Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I did training on this kind of stuff. The acquisition lifecycle absolutely has had massive impact from the hiring freeze. First off, it's just paused because of the confusion, right? Second, it's paused because there are people who are leaving. whether it's the direct contracting officer, or maybe who's somebody who's in line with that acquisition lifecycle. Maybe there was somebody who was in that probationary period who was doing most of the work, and they're out. Now the contracting officer has a bigger and bigger stack of work they just got to deal with. It is a given that the acquisition life cycle, if it was this long, is now this long. You just got to be okay with that, pay attention to it, understand that frustration the contract officer is going through as well. One thing I like to say, and I don't know if I'll say it here in the next slide, but I personally tend to be looking for recompetes, work that was already paid for before, than brand new requirements, because the brand new requirements are going to be a struggle, a larger struggle to kind of get funded and move forward. But on the flip side, some of the things that I think we should be paying attention to is I actually think there's going to be a tendency for faster turnaround options. If there's a lot of confusion and the workforce is shrinking in the federal government, then they might have this tendency to look at an acquisition and go, well, how can I do it in a much more streamlined approach? They might look to a contract vehicle, for example, instead of a direct award or something, or just a standalone contract. They might go, let me just put it on GSA or Seaport Next Gen or something. So you want to be paying attention to that. The other thing is direct awards. They might just lean more into 8As. As long as the 8A program is still active and okay to use, then that's a very streamlined approach. Another one is simplified acquisition, right? They might look to simplified. Basically, that means $250,000 or less. It streamlines the paperwork that the government has to do. So these kind of things might be impacted by that hiring freeze. On a negative side, there is the invoicing. You've got that going on. Make sure you're talking to your banks. Banks are in it for the long haul. If you've got an invoice that you're sending to the federal government, then the banks generally are going to sit there and make sure you have a line of credit. Well, make sure you're putting that in place before you need it, and you're working on there. But if you used to get paid every 30 days, not that that should change because there are these small business rules, but just triple it. Just expect it to be tripled, and then you won't be surprised, right? Be pleasantly surprised they did it earlier, not unhappy that they did it later. The last thing I'm just mentioning about the hiring freeze is it's just going to be harder to engage with federal buyers because of the confusion and some of the frustration, but also just because they're not going to have time to talk to us. So if you're going to get engaged with them in one way or another, you've got to be a lot more tactical. Whatever you do tomorrow, it's different than what we did yesterday. And just keep that in mind, because if you recognize that it's going to be harder to engage, you start thinking about how can I engage them differently, more tactically? How can I make sure every time I engage with them, they go, wow, at least this person didn't waste my time, right? Whatever it is, we want to proactively be thinking about it. All right, so let me give you track of my time here. Oh, by the way, let me just pause 1 second, and I'll come back to that in a second. Do me a favor really quick. We've got 150 plus people in here live. Really quickly in the chat, tell me what you sell in this way. Don't do it your way, do it my way for 1 second, please. Right, I sell or we sell. Like I sell LinkedIn social media to the federal agencies. Like 1, 2, or 3 words in the middle of I sell. I sell full life cycle staffing to federal agencies. Put that in the chat. Let us know what you sell. This is your network. You've got almost 200 people who are live, and then you'll have all the people who watch afterwards. Make it really easy for them to understand what you sell. And they go, oh, they sell janitorial services. They sell cybersecurity services to federal agencies. But make it a little friendly by saying, I sell cybersecurity to federal agencies. If you put that into the chat, I'll be able to see it. And I like that because I'm starting to understand it. I just was talking with a company yesterday. I'm like, I'm always going to know you as the AI company. They do a lot of stuff, but they niched down, which leads me to the next one. Thanks, Hillary, getting that going. Okay, so let's talk about some proactive steps you can take in 2025. And I'm going to go through these pretty fast because I only got 6 minutes. I always end right at 12:30. First thing is evaluate who you're spending time with. This is really important, and it goes with the second bullet of strengthening the existing relationships you have. I just told you to put in, I sell water management solutions to federal agencies, right? Like Jay, I just saw. By doing that, you're increasing your network. People are becoming aware of who you are. But what I want you to do with that first bullet is to start looking at the people you're spending time with and go, is this the best use of my time? For example, and I'm going to say this really humbly, but you spending 30 minutes right now with me gets you tactical tips about what to do in 2025 and other training that I'm doing. Plus, it also gets you networking and a little bit of visibility because I told you to put I sell, right? So I'm a good use of your time. You want to spend time with me 30 minutes a day. I help accelerate it. But if you're talking to me and all I'm doing is complaining about how bad the world is or something, then, maybe you have a coffee with me once in a while, but don't really spend a lot of time with me. And I'm not trying to tell you to go away from friends and family, but this is classic entrepreneurial advice, is hang out with the people who are heading where you want to go, right? And they don't even have to have federal contracts already. They could be a brand new government contractor and they're just positive, enthusiastic, and saying, okay, let me build the network. Let me make introductions. Let me do this. They're givers, right? So I'm not telling you anybody who not to spend time with, but just evaluate who you're spending time with and make sure you're spending a lot more of your time with people who are leaning towards strategic relationships. And strategic relationships, you can think about that as you're both committed to mutual growth. The next thing is number 3, ramp up your RFI responses. Do at least one a month, but I would be looking in there trying to find more. And if you can't find more, you need to spread out the places you're looking for. And I'll do a training next week on this. But find more and more options. Don't just go to Sam, but you should be able to do 1, 2, or 3. And they don't all have to be you as the prime. You could sub and team up with somebody else. Number 4, this is really, really important. So there's Alan saying janitorial services. We sell medical billing and program managers via our GSA partners. So medical billing, if I just pull Calvetta out for 1 second, right? That's a really niched offer. And if you can use that and there's enough spending on it, then you can use that to get in and people remember you. Then you can sell other stuff organically. But make sure you have a niched offer. Her offers are related to each other. But sometimes I see people have stuff that's unrelated and that's not going to be successful. Number 5 or 6 or whatever it is I talked about this before. Learn about what vehicles your services and products are being bought on. And so just go into FPDS. Find out, type in SharePoint for Narayan if you're in here today, in Red Solutions, right? Type in SharePoint, find out everywhere it's being bought, and then look at the contract vehicles. You can follow that straight through on FPDS. Maximize recompetes in FPDS. I talked about how I prefer those. And what I mean is go into FPDS and find contracts that were already awarded that you wish you had won. Then look for a field, and I've done all sorts of training on this, and you can go watch it from like December and January. But look for a field called estimated ultimate completion date, I think is what it's called. And that field tells you when that contract's expected to close, and look for things that are closing in the next 12 months and the ones that you should have won way back when, right? And then go after those, put them into your pipeline and check it out. And I'll show you our pipeline next week on GovCon in a Box to show people how I track that stuff. And then second one for the last, make everything easy for federal buyers. When I send a proposal, for an example, to federal buyers, my general rule is I don't use less than 14-point font. I know it sounds crazy, but it's like, if I can't say in 14-point font enough for them to award me the contract or enough for them to bring me in to have a conversation or something, then whatever I write in 12-point font is not going to help. But it makes it easy because now it's easier to read. This is my type of way of looking at things is I try to make it easier on the buyer to read. I use graphics, right? And so you can talk with Sydney. I know she's in here today, but she has graphic expertise around proposals. But it can also be around your questions you're asking them. Don't waste their time. If you can have a 5-minute meeting instead of a 30 or 60-minute meeting, only have a 5-minute meeting. Get in, get out, thank them profusely. The last one is maximize your visibility on LinkedIn as a SME. Get engaged. If you did not put I sell such and such service to federal agencies into my chat, why not? That was an easy way for you to tell 140, 50 people that you sell something, right? And so you want to tell them that. All right, I'm really tight on my time. I got less than a minute left. Here's what I want you to remember. The circle of concern and circle of influence. If you focus on your circle of influence, you will grow your circle of influence, what you can get done. So focus only on that. Become visible. Join the 100 Club. Go to govconinabox.com. Get your score. Follow my tips to get to 100. And then last thing is 10x your effort. Whatever you're doing today, tomorrow or on Monday, 10x it. Do 10 times as much. Figure out the smartest thing to do and only do that. Get rid of the other stuff. And that's how you can 10x in the same amount of time you have. All right, time's up. Just remember as you head out that government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I will see you in the next training or on networking on Monday.